Microphone here. Here we go. So, floor is yours. We bring up our special guests.
We'd like to introduce you again to Matthew and Will Reeve.
Look at that. Please sit down. Welcome, guys.
Thank you, they were taller and more handsome than us.
Hug from afar.
Awesome. Here's a mic. We have a little microphone sharing we'll have to do. Welcome, guys. First of all, I love interactivity. I'm just going to ask a few questions at the beginning, but then I would really like us to all have a conversation. So I welcome your questions. So just hang on to them for a minute while we start off with a few questions that I have. So my first question is for you, Matthew and Will. So, you grew up with the images of your father as a public persona, and of course then you have your own private knowledge of your father. And I was wondering if you could start off by talking about the ways in which this film bridges some of that gap for you.
Sure. First off, Jaie, thank you for having us here, and thank you all for being here and staying for this part of it, so we're not just talking to an empty room. As far as an answer to your question, you just saw the way the world loved our dad and what he meant to the world. And I think growing up, for me, I realized that. I was generally aware of it, and I'm certainly been aware of that for the past 20 years since he died, because there are so many folks, friends and strangers alike, who always have nice things to say about what he meant to them and what he did for them or represented, etc. So I always knew that was a part of who he was, that was who he was when he was alive, as part of his legacy now. At home, he was the guy who told me to eat my broccoli and go up and clean my room and do my homework and all those things. He was very much just dad. But because he was so present and so much just dad, he was my hero for that reason, because he was my father, not because he was famous or because he was an actor or activist or author or whatever else. It was my father who was doing the best he could to raise me and to raise us. And there was a difference in the sense that anyone's going to be less guarded, I suppose, at home, but the man you saw in public, the man we saw in private, the man you saw up here over the course of his life was consistently who he was, and I think that was part of the magic of him.
Yeah, I mean, and just echo that, I think Hugh, in all of his, when he wasn't playing a fictional character, in all of his sort of public appearances, he was always genuinely him, so you do get a sense of the true person. I think these guys did a fantastic job of capturing and encapsulating, 52 years into a, condensed hour and 45 well-told story. What you see is what it is, and that's up to you guys for accomplishing that.
Thank you. So, Ian and Peter, jumping off of that, how did you approach that balance of giving us all our greatest hits, so to speak, of our memories of Christopher Reeve with that personal story? I mean, it's an awesome responsibility to take on. But talk us through how you struck that balance in the process of making the film and discovering your through line for the story.
Well, it was a real journey for us, because when we started out, when we knew about really that I Know Dad was exactly that, the kind of the public persona, the actor on screen, and we kind of thought we were making a film very much that was going to be about a heroic figure, in a way, a heroic individual, from Superman to facing the huge adversity after the accident. But what happened is, we met these three. We met Will, Matt, and Alexandra, and And I think that sort of suddenly the penny began to drop with us, that this was really a film about something much, much more universal and much more personal. And it was about family. And it was about love, and in a way, there's a story of a family. There's two love stories, in a sense, both with both of your mums, and that became, when we started actually shooting, the first shoots that we did were with the three of you, because I think we had a very strong instinct that that was going to be the backbone of the film.
Anything to add?
No, I mean, Jaie, quickly, I just thought we take always a bit of our time before choosing our next film. It's almost 4 years since our next film came out, previous film came out. So I think, when we started talking with some of our colleague producers on the film about the story, which is there was so much emotional scale with the story in terms of the journey he went through from being standing and being completely incapable of moving or even breathing on his own as a human, and then the scale of being a known actor to becoming one of the most famous figure in the world. Actually, I'm sure there's not only American citizen in here, but you'd be gobsmacked how much tiny villages all across the world still know Christopher Reeve more than any new famous American actors or people. So those two challenge, but as well those two amazing gifts for a filmmaker of the scale of the career and the scale of the individual were amazing gifts for filmmakers, because you knew that you would have those emotional highs and lows if we talk technically.
Thank you. So there's many moments in this film where I got very choked up. But I think, again, watching the end and watching how you guys swung into activism, working with the foundation. Can you talk about about your memories of that time, like jumping into the foundation, making it what it is today, and how that work continues?
Sure. So my sister and I both joined the board shortly after Dana passed away. Will was 13 and joined a bit later, and it was just sort of we didn't give it a second thought. It was just a natural, seamless transition. I mean, the foundation had been a part of our lives since its creation, or certainly since Dana got involved with it, and he talked about it so much. We were so aware of its activities and its reach and how it was helping and where it was going. We did not talk about it at the dinner table. There was a family rule that Will can attest to, that there was no talk of anything medical, anything research related, anything foundation related at dinner, but before and after, certainly. And it's just been a massive honor to be a part of it. We are by no means like the main part of it. There's a lot of people who work for the foundation day to day, full time. A lot of other board members who have given generously, both in time and financially, to ensure its existence, and thousands, tens of thousands of donors. And it's amazing to see the results that we're getting, the progress that's been made, and we're able to carry it on.
And I would just add that, to my recollection, I was never told by my dad or my mom what I needed to be when I grew up, or what I should pursue. I'm sure they cared. I'm sure they had preferences, one over the other, like what field I went into, what passions I pursued, but they never forced anything on us. They wanted us to live our lives and explore our passions and interests, and as long as we were adhering to the values that they were instilling in us as people, I think they felt pretty confident that that was a great head start, and wherever we decided to end up in our lives, or whatever we decided to try, was a worthy pursuit because we were doing it for the right reasons. So insofar as being involved in the foundation, as Matthew said, it was natural that it was a part of our lives, and it was for a cause that was directly related to our lives, and we saw the power and the reach of the organization and knew that we had an opportunity there to have a chance to actually carry on their legacy in a tangible way that helps so many people and just continues to magnify and expand. And so they never said we had to or said we couldn't do anything. It was just follow your passions, and one of them happens to be, luckily for the 3 Reeve kids, helping other people when we can.
That's amazing, wonderful. All right, so what questions do you have for our group up here? I saw your hand first, so we'll go with you, and right there in the middle, yeah. And I'm gonna, we're gonna repeat the questions here because we want everyone here.
A comment. I met Chris when he was president of the Creative Coalition, and 2 points of reference that I think we should be thinking about is Chris was an expert on the environment. If nothing had happened accident-wise, you can imagine how passionate he would be right now. The other thing was, when I was coming down in the elevator to show how humble he was, he said to us, I'm tired of all these stargazers. Give me some real people who want to do work. And I'm just wondering, did he talk to you about the environment when you were growing up?
So the question is, was a comment about Chris being involved with environmental causes and also wanting to connect with people who really wanted to do that kind of work. And the question was if he had talked to his sons about that.
Absolutely. So his period with the Creative Coalition and with other environmental groups and federal funding for the arts and saving theaters along Broadway, that was more sort of my time as a kid. And I remember, sitting quietly or playing in my room, listening to him on the phone, trying to drum up support or planning an event or something. But that was a cause he was very, very passionate about. And I think very early on, after Superman was released and he had this level of fame and attention, he felt a very strong responsibility to use that platform for good and to bring attention to causes that he believed in and thought were worthy of attention. So certainly I remember many calls and faxes and meetings and sitting around having to do something else whilst he was busy doing that, which is a wonderful thing. And I think you're right, had he not had the accident, that certainly would have been something he would have been increasingly involved with over time, and as well as funding for the NEA and a whole host of causes. So that's certainly part of it, and that's interesting to hear that you met him then. And as for that humbleness, that was him. He was just Chris.
Thank you. Right here. Yeah.
About the statue and the green kryptonite looking element. First, who is responsible for that statue? Who created it? And how did you decide that that's what you wanted? That's how you wanted to approach?
Right.
Yeah.
So, can you just repeat what she's?
Yes, the question is really about the statues and who made them and where the idea came from. Let me start with where the idea came from, because I think we always try and find something metaphorical to express the life of people that are our subjects. And we work with CG artists, computer graphic imagery. We've done this now on our three films in very different ways. And with this film, there were a couple of things. There was this idea of outer space and inner space that Chris talked about. That man has conquered the moon, conquered outer space, but inner space is still an unknown thing. And he was very keen that medicine, science address that and look inward rather than outward. So that sort of started to kind of give us ideas of the universe and of nebula and and of actually how that mirrors the internal anatomy and cellular structure and of the spine and so on and so forth. And then the idea of the statue.
No, and I think we always want to have a lot of our films have got very strong visual elements to it. I thought film My Queen is about a very famous fashion designer, which is so creative that it was really hard to create something better than what he had already done. Same with Superman, the imagery from the film itself and the nostalgia that people have for it. We needed to use as much archive of the film as possible, though being very expensive. Let's talk about budget on that. The advantage of us putting an imprint, a visual imprint on the film, it becomes our film, it becomes our original story of Superman. And we wanted to create a vision of Chris that could remind you of being Superman, but at the same time, Chris that could be seen in loads of different positions. So we chose a position where if you look at him going down, it looks he's falling. And if you look at him going up, if you actually swap the frame around or the statue around, it looks like he's aiming at something or flying off. So that's how we come. And the idea of a statue, we had used statue on our previous film, Rising Phoenix, which was about celebrating some of the greatest athletes, but which happens to live with a disability, which connects very much to this film, which just felt, sadly, because of the accident, one of the worst things that happened to Chris is that he was trapped in his own body. So he had become a sculpture, and everything else about him became from his brain, his speech, and his eyes. A lot of people tell us he had those blue piercing eyes, and even if he couldn't hug you, you'll feel the warmth, and if he couldn't beat you up, you'll feel the fear out of his eyes if he was angry with you. So the statue became very, very, very easy. And then obviously what you mentioned is the kryptonite, and we wanted to, I don't know if it's subtle or not subtle, but I think it's not subtle at the end, but I think it works, is to use the kryptonite, which was his kryptonite in the last 9 years of his life. And it allowed us, as well, I think what we love with CGI is many times in documentaries, if you don't do observational documentary and you're here with a camera and you can move around, if you're a filmmaker and you do sit-down interviews, you're very much on a 2D plan. The great advantage, and Matthew is very versed into CGI, is that you can move into the Z, and you can move and travel, and it allows us to hopefully make documentary and non-fiction is such a spectacle that they deserve to be here with all of you around in terms of emotion, but visually as well, that you want to see it on the big screen. So that's what we sneakily try to do. It's not pretentiousness, it's just how can we force people to make us all sit in a room, and that it visually almost it warrants the price of spending a lot of money on a ticket these days. So I think it's all those elements that we try to, same with the music, but we can talk about the music.
Thank you for that question, though, because it is a very beautiful glue that holds the pieces of this film together. So yeah, wonderful question. Yeah, we'll go with you right here.
I think it's a beautiful movie. I was curious what convinced you guys and your family that this team was the right team to help tell your family story. And then I'm also curious about you guys and collaboration and co-directing. Like, how do you guys chop up the responsibilities, and what are your tenets?
That's a great
tenets of collaboration.
Great question. So it's a two-part question. The first is for the Reeve brothers about how they, what was the element that they just found the trust for Ian and Peter to be their filmmakers, and then the second part of the question is how do you co-direct? And if you've seen the Doc NYC Instagram channel lately, you'll get some hints about that. But anyway, go ahead, take it away.
One take.
Yeah.
One take.
Improvised.
Well done. Stick behind the camera. Just kidding. As you can see, we have a very good relationship that we can tease each other. But we, as a family, my brother and I and our sister, had entertained the idea of projects as maybe they'd come along in the last 20 years. Never took it that seriously, whether we wanted to do a documentary or whatever it might have been. We never really got too deep into it because we each have our own busy, fulfilling lives, and we're not like professional offspring. We aren't just here to exist as the children of Christopher Reeve. It's a huge part of who we are, but it's not that it doesn't define us. So we were just off living our own lives. But with this year being 20 years since he passed in October, we felt, if not now, when? And when Matthew was approached by an archivist, he can get into that part, but we basically got a cold email or cold call inbound saying, hey, do you guys have a bunch of home movies of your dad? And the answer was, yes, we do. And that started a ball rolling that led to us meeting the folks at Passion Pictures, which are UK based, and then Misfits Entertainment, which I still don't quite understand how they fit in and out and whatever. You guys can get into that. And then a dear friend of mine, Connor Schell, and his company, Words and Pictures, got involved here, and the team came together, and it just felt like it was the perfect team at the perfect time. Peter and Ian came on and immediately articulated their vision in a way that we knew that this was going to be made correctly, and the way that we hoped that it would be, but more importantly, the way that we think our dad probably would have wanted it, which is not just a chronological retelling of a man's life, and certainly not a hagiography. We wanted it to be unflinching and comprehensive and deeply human, and that is the end result. But we, other than sitting for the interviews and passing off all of our home movies to the filmmakers, and then we just like took our hands off the steering wheel at that point and said, go make the thing that you want to make. And thankfully they did a good job, because it would have been awkward if they didn't. And then it felt only natural that once it was made and we brought it out to Sundance, then Warner Brothers got involved, and now that feels like a natural home, because that was the home of the original Superman film. So it feels like a full circle moment, all within the family. And from where I sit, this could have gone a million different ways, but we're thrilled that this was the way it went, because we're very happy with where it is.
Yeah, it was certainly from after our first meeting with them and how they talked about the project, and it was clear that they would treat it with the love and attention and respect that it deserved. And then also, I'd say, like, we, you know, when we Passion were sort of throwing out names for directors, and those came up, I watched McQueen and I watched Rising Phoenix, the series, and they were both outstanding. And I also really loved the CG element that you asked about that is used in both of those projects. Not just for the CGI itself, but as a storytelling device that does make it cinematic and elevated. And then, of course, they were kind of nice guys too. We got on. And they're great.
And then how do we co-direct?
Can I just say something, just one last thing about the Offspring Professional? You meet the three of them, it's very impressive, not only by their good looks and size, but the smartness and the generosity and the humanity. So, you're a filmmaker, aren't you? Yeah. You know it's a long journey to make a film. So they want to be with the right people. We want to be with the right people. Otherwise, you know, we've all been on project where, whoa, it doesn't feel right. And I think the only thing I've learned in the last 250 years I've been making films, feels like that sometimes, sorry. I don't think there's many versions to make a film, actually. I think the greatest film, there was 1 millimeter each side to be right or wrong, and all the time people have made the right decision, or fate have helped making the right decision, or the right people have jumped into, you know, it's like, you need the right money to make the right film with the right people about the right thing with the right team, and you need the right home to show it to the right people to appreciate it, to take it to the world. And all those elements fell into place on this one. And actually, it's actually quite crazy how well it fell into place.
Totally. As to how we co-direct, how long have you got?
Shall I leave the room?
But I mean, you know, we started out working together. Ian was more from a visual background, and I was more from a screenwriting narrative background. And so we have kind of quite complementary skill sets, although obviously, I mean, I'm set with the visual side, Ian is brilliant on the narrative side, so there's a lot of crossover. But basically, we started working together on McQueen. And it was, I think, the toughest film that we'll ever make, because no one wanted to talk to us. No one wanted to give us a frame of archive. And the whole thing was a struggle. And I think we felt very much kind of alone in that, you know. and backs against the wall, and oh my God, we've got to deliver something. What are we going to deliver? And I think that, so, you know, in a way, a friendship and a creative partnership was forged in kind of the face of some adversity, really. And after that, and getting something on the screen which people seem to love, was, you know, we kind of thought, we've got to do this again. And hopefully next time it's not going to be quite so hard. And it wasn't. So it's been a great sort of experience, really. And you know, getting into the technicalities of how we co-direct. I mean, we work with a wonderful editor, Otto Burnham, and we have a rule of three. So, you know, if there's three of us, and if two people like how something is, or want it to be that way, then the majority wins. So it's very democratic in the edit. And then, actually I should have started with the interviews, but it's actually very useful because when we take turns doing the interviews, so, you know, it'll be, as these guys will attest, long, and we'll have sort of like two-hour sessions, or even more sometimes, and we'll take turns doing the interview. And the person who's doing the interview is almost like a, I don't want to say an actor, but you know, you're trying to have a conversation that is very natural, so that you are eliciting something that feels authentic, and you know, you're not putting the subject in a situation where they feel, oh, this is what I've got to say. And so one person is doing that, and the other person is sitting behind the monitor, and we kind of have an idea, because we write a roadmap for our films before we start on them. We have an idea of what we want in the film. So if something is missed, the director behind the monitor can kind of like then have a conversation with, say, Matthew and Ian, say it's me behind the monitor, with Matthew and Ian, or Will and Ian, and we can kind of like cover what we might have missed. So it's actually works extremely well. Do you want to say?
I should say that that's the long version. The simple version, he used to be my mentor. I was a really bad student, and he decided to keep me in check. That way, no, I think
it's actually true.
Look, I believe we think films are about stories, but stories are a vehicle for emotions. That's why we're all here, and that's why, again, being with more people, you do feel it, and you all felt it on this film, and we love that. It's like music. Why do we go to concert and you see suddenly with one track, everybody raise and all the emotion is there? And I think Peter and I share a lot of emotional things together. We've got a very strong sense of family. We've had certain amount of tragedies in our lives and stuff, and we just, despite slight age difference.
Can anyone guess who's the other one?
No, but in the different path to get there, we do share a lot of common values, and I think we found a lot of those common values with those guys as well. And then it's just we have massive egos, but you just leave them at the door because it's about the film. You need to take care of the film. The film is telling all of us a story, and again, I believe films, obviously you massage them and you search them and you try different things and you go down wrong roads, but in the end there's one right road, and it just pops at you regularly. And Otto is amazing, and he's probably going to become a psychiatrist soon because he spends a lot of time with us. But yeah, it's been a really good process.
Fantastic answer. Okay, so I just got the signal we have time for one more question. So yeah, right there. Go ahead.
First off, thank you all so much for sharing so much of your families.
We love your t-shirt.
We're so grateful for that. You know, in the last 20 years, it's like superhero films have become a billion-dollar industry with like films and TV shows. None of that really exists without the work that your father did, especially without any type of CGI or FX or anything like that. And I'm just kind of curious to what you think your father would think of the trajectory that's come from like Reeve and superhero films like over the last 20 years, because it's basically his legacy.
You're the kind of audience member I like. Now that is a booming voice. Yeah, we don't need to repeat that. Yeah. All right. Who wants to take that one?
Well, first off, thank you for that. Thank you for coming in costume. The rest of you, I don't know. He's wearing a Superman shirt for those who can't see. I think, look, our dad like had a lot of serious things in his life and he took life seriously. He didn't take himself seriously, and he took the craft of acting seriously, but I don't think he took the rest of the BS around it too seriously, all of which is to say, I think he would have gotten a kick out of all of this. I think he would have been very proud of the fact that he was the centerpiece of a film that launched an entire genre. And his performance as Superman and Clark Kent, there was such a dichotomy there. They are two different parts. You can see him, Matthew talks about it in the film, about how he transforms. He took that so seriously that he would have been very proud to say, okay, this film that I was the centerpiece of was the genesis for an entire genre. I think that he would have enjoyed the proliferation of it all. I often wonder, like, had he still been around, would he have popped up in any of these? Maybe, maybe not. He didn't want to be defined as Superman, so he probably would have been off doing different things. But I do think he was very proud of the fact that his role defined the character and that the film defined the genre and laid the blueprint for the proliferation we've seen, as you mentioned, over the past decades.
I mean, it was his approach to any role. I mean, he just wanted to do a good job, and he did a fantastic job in that role in that film. So I think that alone would have given him a great deal of satisfaction. And then I think, as Will said, he would have enjoyed the ride watching other movies and seeing how they carried on. And then also probably, pointed out the fact that he spent 12 months dangling from a crane in a harness, hanging by wires, instead of standing in front of a green screen. I think.
Well, Will, Matthew, Ian, and Peter, thank you so much for helping us bring our series to a close. And thank you all for being here. And wishing you a wonderful theater working with the film when it comes out later this year. So,
Thank you all. Have a great night.
thank you. And remember, we're all going to go to Bonhôte for those who want to keep chatting with our filmmakers.